Hey there, you guys. This is Christian. So yesterday, a bunch of previews for Final Fantasy 16 came out, and a lot of gameplay came out, and a lot of interviews. Um, and I went over a lot of these, and they got me a lot. They got me really hyped for the game. But there was a little bit of, I guess, controversial statements that I was reading. Um, so I just wanted to talk about those for a little bit. Before we get into the video, though, do me a favor, you guys, like and subscribe down below. And with that, let's get into the video. Alright then, so before I get any deeper into this conversation, I do want to talk about a little bit of Final Fantasy 16 and like my hype for it. So Final Fantasy has been a series that I have grown up with ever since I was a little kid. Final Fantasy 10 was one of the first games I ever actually beat. So with that, Final Fantasy has a very deep connection with me and a lot of nostalgia. When I saw the original trailer for Final Fantasy 16, I was very impressed, but I kind of forgot about it over time. And then last year, when they released another trailer during the State of Play, I was so over the top excited that I went out and bought a PS5. Even though the game wasn't coming out a year from then, I knew that day one I had to have a PS5. Day one I had to pick up Final Fantasy 16 because this looks like what I loved from Final Fantasy on like another level. But yeah, ever since then, I've been reading a lot of interviews with the director Yoshi P, and I love Yoshi P. I love what he did with Final Fantasy 14. I have all the trust in him that he's going to deliver probably one of the greatest Final Fantasy games of all time, definitely of modern era Final Fantasy. So it definitely hurts sometimes some of the things he says and some of the way he views not only the fans, I guess, but the Final Fantasy series as a whole. I know I've seen a small number of traditional Final Fantasy fans not be so hyped for this game and kind of a little bit angry with the fact that it's moving away from its more traditional turn-based style into more of a hack and slash Devil May Cry style of fighting. I personally didn't really have an issue with this just because I know that Final Fantasy has never really been a stagnant series. It's always trying to change things up and see what it can do to evolve the series or what it can try next. From Final Fantasy 7 using materia to Final Fantasy 8 drawing magic, it's always kind of just looking for what it can do different. So for me, it was never really an issue when Final Fantasy 16 wanted to do things differently. Plus, like even in modern eras like Final Fantasy 15, Final Fantasy 12, they always kind of tiptoed around the idea of being less turn-based and more real-time. So it was just, for me, looked like a natural progression of what Final Fantasy was kind of always headed towards. Yoshi P has been very vocal about his thought process going into this game, specifically with the combat and the reason why they chose to go in this different direction. But in doing so, he kind of talks down on traditional turn-based JRPGs. I know a couple months ago he was saying how traditional turn-based JRPGs are primitive and they don't really sell to modern audiences. Which, I mean, I guess there's an argument to be had there since I don't think there's as much traditional turn-based RPGs as there once was. But, I mean, Persona 5, Pokemon, Dragon Quest are all game series that have done very well mainstream and are traditional turn-based RPGs. So, I'm not saying that traditional JRPGs aren't old school, but it doesn't mean that they're not still loved. So when he says things like a generation that grew up on first-person shooters and Grand Theft Auto games aren't going to be interested in a turn-based JRPG, I mean, yeah, sure, you're not going to get all the Call of Duty players to play your JRPG, but you're also not going to get all your Call of Duty players to play Devil May Cry or even God of War. It's a different fan base. So I understand his approach where he wants to grab a new generation, a new audience, and get them excited for Final Fantasy again. But I think he's forgetting that video games now are more popular than they ever been, and there's a larger pool of gamers out there, and you can't cater to all of them. It's not gonna happen. With all that being said, in the most recent interview that he had, he was pretty much going out there saying how a lot of fans like to compartmentalize Final Fantasy games and all JRPGs in the same like subgenre, and how even the term JRPG, Japanese role-playing game, is very offensive or has been very offensive in the past. And even though he understands that nowadays people have a larger respect for Japanese RPGs, that for a lot of game developers in Japan, it is a very offensive and it still holds a lot of baggage. But when I hear this, it definitely shines a big light on what Yoshi P is thinking going into this game, and it gets me excited because now I understand that he's coming from a place of deep passion and how he definitely wants to shape the next generation of role-playing games, specifically those developed in Japan. I'm excited because you can see the fire in his project now. You can see how he went into this not with the boundaries of a Final Fantasy game, not with the boundaries of a quote-unquote JRPG game, but instead he's going into this with zero boundaries, zero expectations of what this game needs to be based off of what it's been in the past. Instead, he's going into this game saying, I want to make the best game underneath the Final Fantasy series that I can. And with that idea of coming into this and just making a game and making the best game you possibly can, I feel like this is going to help elevate this game to levels that I don't think I was ever ready for. I feel like when you get someone that's this passionate for games, this passionate for their creation, you remove all boundaries and restrictions and you let them create what they truly want to create in their heart of hearts. And I feel like this is the most exciting thing. When a AAA game is going in with this much passion and this much innovation, this is why I love Final Fantasy. This is why I love game developers. Things like this. In a new world of gaming where it's full of live services, free-to-play games, expansion DLC packs, and this very formulaic way of making games, I feel like this is going to be a breakout. This is going to remind people and let people know that you can make a AAA game with this much passion and innovation and it be not only critically received, but I feel like this is going to be a huge commercial success and a reason why you get a PS5. The same way the Final Fantasy VII made the PlayStation a reason and a must-buy, Final Fantasy 16 is going to be a must-buy. You need to get a PlayStation 5 because this game is a game changer. This is going to be the Final Fantasy of the generation and what hopefully sets Square Enix back on track to being a strong developing team and gets people excited for their next project. With all that being said, I don't think I ever doubted that this game was going to be amazing. This has been one of my most hyped games of this year. But I feel like now with all these previews coming out and understanding more of where the game developers are coming from, I'm even more ecstatic. June 22nd can't come any sooner. This is now my most hyped, my most anticipated game of this year. And I just can't wait to get my hands on it. So that's it. That's all my thoughts. Let me know down below, guys, if you're excited for this game, if you're going to be checking it out. With that, I'll see you guys in the next video.